So the CNN Democratic Town Hall has just finished, and I wanted to give you guys my opinion on it. Basically, first and foremost, before I give you my analysis, I can't help but notice how this seemed like a really desperate attempt on behalf of the DNC to help Hillary Clinton, because every time when Debbie Wasserman Schultz is questioned about why she is limiting the number of debates, she'll always say that she doesn't want the candidates to have to take time away from, their campaigning and whatever the case may be. She doesn't want it to be a distraction, which is idiotic because it's something that can help their campaigns. But nonetheless, now that, the numbers are now neck and neck in Iowa and Bernie Sanders is just pulling away in New Hampshire, this was kind of a last-ditch, desperate attempt to maybe save Hillary Clinton's campaign. And overall, don't think it's going to help. So first and foremost, before I get into how I think each candidate did, I think that Chris Cuomo did a horrific job. The bias was so evident, so let's all take out our tinfoil hats for a minute again, because we gotta do it, okay? Because the establishment is just so against Bernie Sanders. We are absolutely correct, again, to take out our tinfoil hats. So, a couple things that I noticed. I don't know if I'm crazy, but, let me just throw them out there. So, he was really, really soft towards Hillary Clinton. He tried to, quote, challenge her a couple of times, but he didn't push back against Hillary Clinton like he did against Bernie Sanders. And furthermore, when it comes to time restraints, so he interrupted Bernie Sanders, he interrupted Martin O'Malley, but Hillary Clinton droned on for like 50 minutes about foreign policy and how, well, I flew to Cairo to meet with President Morsi of Egypt, then I was here, then I was there. I mean, was he ever going to cut her off? Because he certainly cut off Bernie Sanders and Martin O'Malley, so I thought that wasn't fair. And you can really tell who Chris Cuomo's candidate was. It certainly wasn't Bernie Sanders. It certainly wasn't Martin O'Malley. Now, with that being said, let me go ahead and get into the actual analyses of each candidate. So basically, I'm going to start with Hillary Clinton. Okay, so for the very first question that she was asked, it was, in effect, this. Okay, Hillary Clinton, so you are so great. You were endorsed by this organization, by this news outlet. So I just want to know, what is it like being so amazing? That was basically the question. And then for the second question, he brought up the point that this is a real nail-biter of an election. So how is it that a self-described piece of shit socialist like Bernie Sanders is now catching up to you? I mean, what are your thoughts on this piece of shit plebeian lover and why you think he's doing so well? That was basically the question. So, Chris Cuomo is, very biased. Now, of course, whenever asked about Bernie Sanders, because he's better on policies, because he's more left-wing on a lot of policies, Hillary Clinton, she doesn't answer that. She pivots to Republicans. I've noted this before every single time. Now, mark my words, in an interview, if she is asked about Bernie Sanders' policies, guarantee it, she's going to pivot to the Republicans because his policies, regardless if she wants to admit it or not, are more in line with Democratic voters. When it comes to universal health care, 81% of us support it. So, I mean, that's what she does, and it's a strategy that I think is really smart, but I notice it, and I don't think that very many people do, except for my viewers, because you guys are super smart and cognizant of these types of political tricks. Now, when it comes to healthcare, she states how, when she was, first lady and whatnot, and during her career, insurance companies spent so much money against her. And then she talked about how, but I didn't give up. We got the child health insurance program, but Hillary Clinton, you did give up. You're giving us this speech about how you didn't give up. You did technically give up. You fought for universal health care, and then you completely not just gave up, you abandoned that policy. You were co-opted by the health insurance industry, and as soon as you began giving speeches on their behalf and getting paid millions for that, and also as soon as you started to take campaign contributions from them once they bought you, you gave up entirely. So to give us this speech that, oh, don't give up, we can do this, it just doesn't seem right coming from you. Now, furthermore, she stated something that made my head pop off my body. I had to sew it back on. It almost drove me crazy. So she said that she has a 40-year record of defending against all types of inequality, including that for the LGBT community. No, you don't. You do not have that, because I literally just posted a video within the last week showing how you were fighting against marriage equality and how you actually pledged to fight against marriage equality if it were to come up in the future. And basically, you supported policies that directly harmed us. DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, banned marriage equality federally. Also, Don't Ask, Don't Tell, banned gay people from serving openly in the military. Marriage equality, you were against that. So don't give me this BS. I mean, look, you can say you were the first lady to ever march in a gay pride parade, but that doesn't mean anything to me. Okay, it's symbolic, and symbolic acts like this, they have their place in politics, but what really matters is policy. And when it comes to policy, you abandoned us, so you don't get to say that you fought for us for 40 years. No, you abandoned us. You were a coward, so you don't get to use that. Sorry. Now, also, she really tried to hammer home the case that, she is phenomenal when it comes to foreign policy issues because she has experience. I don't think anybody on the Bernie Sanders side, like myself, is questioning whether or not she's qualified to do the job as president. We just don't trust you. We think that you're going to get in there and you're going to sell out to corporate interest. Well, you've already sold out to corporate interests. We can look at your donations, but we think that you're just going to do their bidding. That's why we are very skeptical about you, because Obama, he was promising to do a lot of great things, kind of like Bernie Sanders. He got us really excited. We didn't look at the donations then. We were a little bit naive, and then he got in there, and look at this. He's pushing the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He's basically become a corporatist, so we don't trust you there. But with that being said, I thought that she did a great job answering the question about Islamophobia. Good on that. I think she articulated what needed to be said really well. And also, I was a little bit puzzled by the Benghazi question. I mean, why are we asking this? I don't care about that. That's not a scandal. I mean, I care about the incident. I'm saddened by the incident, but that's not a real scandal. That's a Republican attack to discredit Hillary Clinton. You don't need a scandal to discredit Hillary Clinton. I mean, you could look at her campaign contributions and her speaking fees, and that does it on its own. So you don't need one of these trumped up scandals. So that's not something that resonates with me at all. Now, when it comes to the email question, again, I don't care about this scandal, but she did say something that was very disingenuous. She said that she turned over her emails over, she didn't say the number, but I believe before she said that she turned over 55,000 emails. But what she's not telling you is that she deleted like 10 to 12,000 emails prior to turning in the rest of them. So sure, she turned over a bunch of emails, but she deleted a bunch. And she said that they weren't relevant. Well, that seems really disingenuous. Now again, I don't care about the email scandal. I look to policy. I disagree with her on policy. I look at the campaign contributions. I don't need these scandals that are mostly trumped up by Republicans. Now, for the last question, when she was asked who her favorite president was, the kid asking the question had a little Freudian slip there. He said, no, I could see why they wanted to ask you this question. This kind of implied that, the questions, although they were fielded by CNN of people who wanted to ask them, well, what is suggested there is that he was kind of given the question by CNN and it wasn't something that he wanted to ask himself, which it was a stupid question. I don't care who's your favorite president. That doesn't matter. But anyways, putting that aside, the kid on Twitter had said, look, that was my question. I wanted to ask it, but I don't know. I'm a little bit skeptical there. I haven't put away my tinfoil hat yet. And yeah, because I mean, in a type of event like this, where it's kind of this last minute thing to have this town hall to potentially save the DNC's favorite candidate's campaign, who's not doing too well right now, you got to keep out that tinfoil hat. Okay, so when it comes to Bernie Sanders, here's the thing that bugs me to no end. So there is the biggest double standard ever. So anytime any candidate talks about their policies, anytime a Republican talks about how they want to go to war and spend trillions of dollars doing that, they want to go to war with Iran, they don't directly say it, but you know what they mean. They want to spend all this money, they want, to invade Syria, they want to ramp up that war. Nobody asks the question, how are you going to pay for that? But when it comes to Bernie Sanders, and when he actually wants to help people, he wants to give us, universal health care and whatnot, the question always comes up, well, how are you going to pay for that? Well, that's a double standard. You can ask that question, but be consistent in your application of that question. Don't just ask it to Bernie Sanders. And it pisses me off that you ask that question to someone who wants to help us. Why is that question never posed to policies that harm us? Why doesn't anybody ask the Republicans how you're going to pay for all these tax cuts to billionaires? How you're going to pay for corporate subsidies? How you're going to pay for subsidies to the oil and gas industry? Why is it that Bernie Sanders is the only one being asked this question? And furthermore, these aren't free programs. They are funded by my tax dollars. So if you want to call it an entitlement plan, I disagree with that because I think that healthcare should be a right, but fine. Yeah, I am entitled to actually have my tax dollars go to good use. Right now, my tax dollars are helping rich people get subsidies and whatnot. So you know what? Don't tell me about that. That's just bullshit. Okay, so furthermore, the questions that Chris Cuomo asked, I mean, look, he constantly pushed back against Bernie Sanders. Well, are you going to bring back the biggest government ever? What kind of a question is that? Are you going to bring back the biggest government ever? What does that even mean? That's a scare tactic. It's like, ooh, socialism. No, I'm so scared of that. Big government is just an empty thing that Republicans like to do to scare you, so that way they can try to insinuate something like, oh, well, you know, the government's going to get so big that they're going to take away your rights, they're going to take away your house, take away your ownership rights and whatnot. Get out of here, okay? Big government, my ass. Do you want to know what's big government? Spending billions and billions and billions, over $500 billion per year on our military. We can cut that in half and still be #1 in the world in terms of military spending. You want to know what's big government? Corporate subsidies. You want to know what's big government? The bailout for Wall Street. We forget that big government can work in our favor. So Social Security, big government, highest approval rating of any type of social policy. So big government is not inherently evil. It's kind of like taxes. Whenever you say the word tax, oh no, you said taxes, you want to raise taxes, but you don't dive into the nuance of it. You don't think, oh yeah, well, I'm actually going to save money because I'm not going to be having to pay for health insurance premiums, but you know, you said taxes, so now I'm freaking out. We need to stop being so reactionary to terms that scare us, such as socialism, such as big government, such as taxes. That's how children think, and we need to process things differently as rational adults. Now, when it comes to the question of how would you be more helpful to women, I thought that Bernie did a great job at answering that, but here's how I would have answered it. Well, this is how I'm going to be more representative of women than Hillary Clinton. I'm going to represent all women, not just the rich white women, not just the women that are in the elite class. I'm going to represent every single woman. I also like that he gave a really great answer when it comes to foreign policy on how, even though he's always said to not be qualified or not be apt to deal with those types of issues, he gave a great answer because he's been right all along. He didn't have to come back and say, I made a mistake on the Iraq War. He didn't have to come out and say, look, we shouldn't have voted against Glass-Steagall, and I feel bad about doing that. He just did it, okay? So if you come to that conclusion the first time, you're the better candidate. Now, Chris Cuomo also accused Bernie Sanders of basically running a dirty campaign. He said that, talking about Dick Cheney and Hillary Clinton in the same sentence is not really the most highbrow way to run a campaign or something like that. But what about Hillary Clinton's attacks? In the last week, she has attacked him for being too old. One of her super PACs demanded that he release his health records. The head of one of her super PACs, David Brock, said that he doesn't care about black people because his ad is too white. Also, she's been saying all week, as well as her daughter, Chelsea Clinton, that he wants to remove healthcare. I can go on. So if you're going to talk about how to run the most highbrow campaign, maybe you should look to Hillary Clinton. But of course, Chris Cuomo did not bring that up. Now, they love bringing up this gun question because that's really where they can get Bernie Sanders, right? That's just his weak spot, which I disagree with. Also, I thought that it was devastating how he explained how she's not running gun control ads in rural Iowa because that wouldn't be very popular. I mean, damn, that was huge. Now, one thing that bugs me is that the mental health issue is not a factor when it comes to gun violence. It's an assertion that Republicans bring up to pivot away from the fact that we actually need gun control. But I'm not going to contest it because, of course, we need mental health care. So if you're going to ramp it up in hopes that that's going to stop gun violence, great. It's not, but we do need mental health care. So, I mean, if we could inadvertently address that, then I'm cool with that, right? But universal health care would actually help with that. So getting to Chris Cuomo and his bias back on the gun issue, this is basically what he instructed Bernie Sanders to do. Basically, tell him why you flip-flopped, Bernie. Why don't you explain why you changed your mind there on manufacturers and being allowed to sue them and hold them liable? I'm so cool. I'm Chris Cuomo. Look, there's so many flip-flops of Hillary Clinton that I'm glad Bernie Sanders pointed out. Why didn't Chris Cuomo grill her in the same way? It just makes me so angry. And furthermore, I think that holding gun manufacturers and gun businesses accountable is a stupid idea. Now, if you're going to say in the same breath that, you think that we should hold military contractors responsible for the deaths of civilians and our American soldiers abroad and whatnot, then sure, be consistent in your application. But that's just not a smart policy. So I disagree with Hillary Clinton on that. Now, everything that Chris Cuomo threw at Bernie Sanders, he was able to answer phenomenally. And finally, when he starts doing a great job, and when Chris Cuomo sees that, he's answering these questions too well, he's giving too much substance, then Chris Cuomo decided to pivot to Bernie talking about being an athlete and whatnot. And of course, that brought to the ageist question. I am so sick of this coming up. He is within the same age range as Hillary Clinton, as Donald Trump, as many running for president. So this is something that is so biased because he's the oldest. They don't realize that he's just a few years older than Hillary Clinton, a few years older than Donald Trump. So I think that this needs to stop, okay? Because it's about the policy. He's clearly healthy. He shouldn't have to release his health records. I believe him. But, I think it's the right thing to do just for his campaign. Okay, getting to Martin O'Malley. A lot of people say that I'm a bit too hard on Martin O'Malley. And I'm going to continue with that trend because he just does nothing for me. Nothing he says excites me except for when he talks about climate change. But I'm sorry, but he comes off as fake. Everything that he says seems like too rehearsed. Nothing feels as though it's just off the cuff. He seems like someone who read How to Be a Politician 101 or Politicians for Dummies or something like that. Like, I just don't believe in very much that he says. I know that he'll run as, a progressive and then get in office and become a corporatist Democrat, much like Obama, and I'm sick of that. So I'm not feeling Martin O'Malley, but at the same time, he did do a good job, nonetheless, although he got wrecked on the very first question when the lady asked him about, his record in Baltimore and, during his tenure as the governor of Maryland, and she basically explained everything wrong with his campaign, zero tolerance policies, and how they impact the African-American community. Oh my God, that right there was just a knockout question. And I don't think he really did a great job at recovering from it because those zero tolerance policies are completely idiotic. And of course, they disproportionately impact African American and minority communities. So I don't think he did a good job there, but everything else he did okay. And I also kind of felt bad for him, though, towards the end when Chris Cuomo asked, well, who should your supporters caucus for when you inevitably lose? Because you are going to lose. I thought, ouch, poor Martin O'Malley, because, we all know it's inevitable. I don't think he's going to hit that 15% threshold in many counties that he's caucusing in. But nonetheless, I thought it was a legitimate question, and I think that he had the right answer. You're not going to say, well, how about we go for this person, because we are going to lose. No, he had the right answer. Is he going to win? No way. Is it possible that he could potentially come in second in some areas? Sure, anything is possible, but his numbers are just so devastatingly low that it's too late for him to really be this comeback kid. I don't think that that's going to happen. So his supporters will go to Bernie Sanders. Polls show 2-1 that after Martin O'Malley, their second choice is Bernie Sanders. So it will be good for Bernie Sanders if this is the case. But anyways, this has been way too long. I try to keep this brief, but way longer than I wanted it to be. Anyways, that's my take on the town hall. Completely biased in favor of Hillary Clinton. We already knew coming into this that would be the case, but Chris Cuomo did a terrible job. He is not very good at remaining objective and neutral. He absolutely was in this on a mission to destroy Bernie Sanders. Didn't happen. It ain't gonna happen. He is now well equipped to deal with your bullshit. He knows exactly what to expect from the establishment. We all know what to expect from the establishment. And Hillary Clinton was allowed to ramble on as long as she wanted to. This was the pro-Hillary Clinton town hall. But it didn't work. I think that Bernie Sanders came out stronger than Hillary Clinton. So in the end, it was just another attempt for the establishment to stifle his campaign, and it was an epic failure. So Iowa is 1 week away now, and it's on. Let's do it. I'm ready.